Welcome, everyone, to Story Fellowship. We have been on this journey for quite some time through the realm of Max Chase, and our esteemed reader and leader, Dennis Jones, will be taking it away again tonight. Dennis, you ready? Dennis?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, let's start this party.
Second I lie is a goat. As Loki had promised, I woke up with a goat in my face. Confession time. My only previous experience with kissing had been with Jackie Molotov in 7th grade. Behind the bleachers at a school dance. Yes, I know. That's lame, seeing how I was now 16. But during the past few years, I've been a little busy, living on the streets and whatnot. Anyway, with apologies to Jackie, getting mouth to mouth from a goat reminded me of her. I rolled over and puked into the river, conventionally located right next to me. My bones felt as if they had been broken and mended with duct tape. My mouth tasted like chewed grass and old nickels. "Oh, you're alive," said the goat. He sounded mildly disappointed. I sat up and groaned. The goat's horns curved outward like the top half of an hourglass. Stickers, burrs, matted his shaggy brown fur. A lot of questions crowded into my head. Where am I? Why are you a talking goat? Why does your breath smell so bad? Have you been eating spare change? The first question that came out was, where are my friends? What? Why? Who's host? Try getting on.
I don't know who host is.
Are you in the waiting room?
Wait a minute. Whoever is the host, it's not.
Mary, you the host?
Whoever the host.
Emily, you the host?
No, it says you are.
Oh, I am? Well, I don't see an admin. You're not I can't admin you.
Okay, maybe Marie is. Marie, are you the host?
Two people, view. Oh, yeah, it's me. Admin.
Who's host?
I was.
Oh my
Well,
God.
it didn't show anybody.
It just kicked me. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it does that to Emily a lot of times.
Yeah.
Clary's joining, and I just gave her,
Sorry, guys. Sorry for the disruption. I literally logged off to find a funny picture of a goat, and it was like, you're no longer on the call.
Yeah, there's Clary. The first question that came out was, where are my friends? The elfin girl asked the goat. Oh, they're dead. My heart threatened to exit via my throat. What? No. The goat gestured with his horn. A few yards to my right, Hearthstone and Sam lay crumpled on the rocky beach. I scrambled over. I placed my hands on their throats and almost passed out again, from relief this time. They're not dead, I told the goat. They both have pulses. Oh, the goat sighed. Well, give them a few more hours and they'll probably be dead. What is wrong with you? Everything, said the goat. My whole life is one big never mind. I said, just be quiet. The goat brayed. Sure, I understand. You don't want to know my problems. No one does. I'll be over here weeping or whatever. Just ignore me. Keeping my hands against Sam's and Hearthstone's carotid arteries, I sent warmth through my fingertips into their circulatory systems. Sam was easy to heal. Her heart was strong. She responded almost immediately, her eyes fluttering open, her lungs gasping for air. She curled sideways and began vomiting, which I took as a good sign. Hearthstone, though, something was wrong beyond the water in his lungs and the cold in his limbs. Right at his core, a dense knot of dark emotions sapped his will to live. The pain was so intense it threw me back to the night of my mother's death. I remembered my hands slipping from the fire escape, the windows of our apartment exploding above me. Hearthstone's grief was even worse than that. I didn't know exactly what he had suffered, but his despair almost overwhelmed me. I gasped for a happy memory. My mom and me picking wild blueberries in Hancock Hill. The air so clear I could see Quincy Bay glittering in the horizon. I sent a flood of warmth into Hearthstone's chest. His eyes flew open. He stared at me, uncomprehending. Then he pointed at my face and gestured weakly, the sign for light. What do you mean? I asked. Sam groaned. She rose one more arm and pointed at me. Magnus, why are you glowing? I looked at my hands. Sure enough, I seemed to have been dipped in Volkvanger light. The warm, buttery aura was starting to fade, but I could feel residual power tingling along my arms' hairs. Apparently, I said, if I heal too much at once, I glow. Sam winced. Well, thanks for healing us, but try not to self-combust. How is Hearth? I helped him up. I helped him sit up. How you feeling, buddy? He made a circle with his thumb and middle finger, then flicked it upward, the sign for terrible. No surprise, given the depths of pain I'd felt within him. I was surprised he wasn't constantly screaming. I started to say, when I healed you, he put his hands over mine, a sign language version of hush. Maybe we had some residual connection from the healing magic, but when I met Hearthstone's eyes, I could tell what he was thinking. His message was an almost audible voice in my head, like when Jack the sword had started to speak.
Yeah.
Yes, the sword speaks.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the big reveal last time, and they decided to name it Jack. Dude, could you make me a host so I can put up some images like I used to?
I don't know how to do host. You take host.
Just go to participant list, click my name, and say make host.
Click participant's name. Put in waiting room.
What? There you
Okay,
go.
so you're now host.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Later Hearth told me, thank you, brother. I was too startled to reply. The goat plotted over. You really should take better care of your elf. They need lots of sunshine. Not this weak Jotunheim light. And you can't overwater them by drowning them in rivers. Hearthstone frowned. He signed, the goat is speaking. I tried to clear my head. Yeah, he is. I also read, John, you want to mute?
Yeah.
I tried to clear my head. Yeah, he is. I also read the sign language. said the goat. I also read sign language, said the goat. My name is Tangenajorster, which means teeth grinder, because, well, it's a nervous habit of mine. But nobody calls me Tangenjorster. It's a horrible name. Just call me Otis. Sam struggled to her feet. Her hijab had come undone and now hung around her neck like a gunslinger's bandana. So, Otis, what brings you here to this place, that is, wherever we are? Otis sighed. I got lost, which is typical. I was trying to find my way back to camp when I found you all instead. I suppose you'll kill me and eat me for dinner now. I frowned at Sam. Were you planning to kill the goat? No, were you? I looked at Otis. We weren't planning to kill you. It's okay if you want to, Otis said. I'm used to it. My master kills me all the time. He does? I asked. Oh, sure. I'm basically a talking mule on four hooves. My therapist says that's why I'm down all the time. But I don't know. I think it goes way back to when I was a kid. Sorry, wait. Who is your master? Hearthstone spelled out Thor. Thor. Duh. Duh. That's right, said the goat. Although his last name is not Thor, is not Duh. You haven't seen him, have you? No. I thought about my dream. I could still smell the bitter almonds on Loki's breath. The gods don't even pretend to deal in good and evil, Magnus. Think about that when you meet Thor. Junior had told us to seek out Thor. The river had somehow brought us to where we needed to be. Only now I wasn't sure I wanted to be here. Samria adjusted her headscarf. I'm not a big fan of Thor, but if he can give us directions to Leningvi, we need to talk to him. Except the goat is lost, I said. So how do we find Thor? Hearthstone pointed to my pendant. Ask Jack. Instead of spelling his name, he made the sign for Jack in the Box, which looked like a finger rabbit popping up from behind his hand. Sometimes sign language can be a little too literal. I pulled off the pendant. The sword grew to full length and began to hum. Hey, said Jack, the runes glowing along his blade. Glad you survived. Oh, is that Otis? Cool. Thor must be around here somewhere. Otis pleaded. You have a talking sword? I've never been killed by a talking sword before. That's fine. If you could just make a clean cut right across the throat. Otis, Jack said, don't you know me? I'm Freya's sword. Smart Summerbrander. We met at the party at Blissner, the one where you were playing tug of war with Loki. Oh, Otis shook his horns. Yes, that was embarrassing. Jack, I said, we're looking for Thor. Any chance you can point us in the right direction? Easy, Miss Squeezy. The sword tugged at my arm. I'm reading a big concentration of hot air and thunder that way. Sam and I helped Hearthstone to his feet. He wasn't looking too good. His lips were pale green. He wobbled like he'd just gotten off a tilt-a-whirl. Otis, Sam said, can our friend ride you? It might be quicker. Sure, the goat said. Ride me, kill me, whatever. But I should warn you, this is Jotunheim. If we go the wrong way, we'll run across giants. Then we'll all be butchered and put in a stew pot. We won't go the wrong way, I promise. Will we, Jack? Said the sword. Oh, no, probably not. Like a 60% chance we'll live. Jack, kidding, he said. Geez, so uptight. He pointed upstream and led us through the foggy morning with spotty snow flurries and a 40% chance of death. 48. Hearthstone passes out even more than Jason Grace, though I have no idea who that is. Jotunheim looked a lot like Vermont. just with fewer signs offering maple syrup products. Snow dusted the dark mountains. Waist-high drifts choked the valleys. Pine trees bristled with icicles. Jack hovered in front, guiding us along the river as it zigzagged through canyons blanketed in sub-zero shadows. We climbed trails next to half-frozen waterfalls, my sweat chilling instantly against my skin. In other words, it was a huge amount of fun. Sam and I stayed close to Hearthstone. I hope my residual aura of Frey glow might do him some good, but he still looked pretty weak. The best we could do was keep him from sliding off the goat. Hang in there, I told him. He signed something, maybe sorry, but his gesture was so lifeless. I wasn't sure. Just rest, I said. He grunted in frustration. He groped through his bag of runes, pulled one out, and placed it in my hand. He pointed to the stone, then to himself, as if to say, "This is me." The rune was one. I didn't know. And it's I'll just show you. Can you see it? Or you can see me. Let me see. Ooh, where am I? I can't do it right. See the symbol? Sam frowned when she saw it. That's Perthro. What does it mean? I asked. She glanced cautiously at Hearth. Are you trying to explain? She glanced cautiously at Hearth. Are you trying to explain what happened to you? You want Magnus to know? Hearthstone took a deep breath, like he was preparing for a sprint. He sighed. Magnus felt pain. I closed my fingers around the stone. Yeah, when I healed you, there was something dark. Hearth pointed again at the stone. He looked at Sam. You want me to tell him? She asked. You sure? He nodded, then rested his head against the ghost's back and closed his eyes. We walked for about 20 yards before Sam said anything. When Hearth and I were in Elfheim, she started. He told me part of his story. I don't know all the details, but his parents. She struggled to find words. Otis, the goat, pleaded. Go on. I love depressing stories. Be quiet, Sam ordered. I'll just be quiet then, the goat agreed. I studied Hearthstone's face. He looked so peaceful, asleep. Blitzen told me a little bit, I said. Hearth's parents never accepted him because he was deaf. It was worse than that, Sam said. They were not good people. Sam of Loki's acidic tone crept into her voice as if she were imagining Hearth's parents on the receiving end of mistletoe darts. Hearth had a brother, Endyron, who died very young. It wasn't Hearthstone's fault, but his parents took out their bitterness on him. They always told him the wrong brother had died. To them, Hearth was a disappointment, a disbelief elf, a punishment from the gods. He could do no right. I clenched the runestone. He still carries all that pain inside gods. Sam laid her hand on Hearth's ankle. He couldn't tell me the details of how he grew up, but I got the feeling it was worse than you can imagine. I looked at the rune. No wonder he daydreamed about working magic. But this symbol, Pethro, symbolizes an empty cup cup lying sideways. Sam said it could be spilled drink, or a cup waiting to be filled, or a cup for throwing dice like fate. I don't understand. Sam brushed some goat hair from Hearthstone's pants cuff. I think Perthro is the ruin Hearthstone personally relates to when he went to Murmur and drank from the well. Hearthstone was offered a choice between two features. If you took the first path, Murmur would grant him speech and hearing and send him back to Alfheim to live a normal life. But he would have to give up his dream of magic if he chose the second path. He learned magic, I guess, but he would stay the way he is, deaf and dumb, hated by his own parents. What kind of messed up choice is that? I haven't stepped on Murmur's face when I had the chance. I should have stepped on Murmur's face when I had the chance. Sam shook her head. Mimer just presented the choices, magic and normal life, or mutuality exclusive. Only people who have known great pain have the capacity to learn magic. They have to be like hollow cups, even Odin. He gave up an eye to drink from Murmur's well, but that was just the beginning. In order to learn the runes, Odin fashioned a noose and hanged himself from a branch of the world tree for 9 days. My stomach checked to see if it had anything left to retch. It settled for dry spasms. That's not right. But it was necessary, Sam said. Odin pierced his side with his own spear and hung there in pain, without food or water, until the runes revealed themselves. The pain made him hollow, a receptacle for magic. I looked at Hearthstone. I wasn't sure whether to hug him or wake him up and scold him. How could anyone willingly choose to hold on to that much pain? What kind of magic could possibly be worth the cost? I've done magic, I said, healing, walking into flames, blasting weapons out of people's hands, but I've never suffered like Hearth has. Samara pierced her lips. That's different, Magnus. You were born with your magic, an inheritance from your father. You can't choose your abilities to change them. Cedar is innate. It's also laser magic compared to what the runes can do. Laser? I didn't want to argue about whose magic was more impressive, but most of the things I'd seen Hearthstone do had been pretty subtle. I told you back in Valhalla, Sam said, the runes are the secret language of the universe. Learning them, you can recode reality. The only limits on your magic are your strengths, your strength in your imagination. So why don't more people learn runes? That's what I've been telling you. It requires incredible sacrifice. Most people would die before they got as far as Hearthstone has. I tucked Hearthstone's scarf around his neck. I understood now why he'd been willing to risk rune magic to a guy with his troubled past. Recoding reality must have sounded pretty good. I also thought about the message he'd whispered into my mind. He'd called me brother. After everything Hearthstone had been through with his own brother's death, that could not have been easy. So Hearth made himself an empty cup, I said, like Perthro. Trying to fill himself with the power of magic, Sam agreed. I don't know all the meaning of Perthro, Magnus, but I do know one thing. Hearthstone cast it when we were falling from the cliff into the river. I tried to remember, but I'd been overwhelmed with exhaustion. falling from the cliff into the river. I tried to remember, but I'd been overwhelmed with exhaustion. As soon as I gripped the sword, what did it do? It got us here, Sam said, and it left Hearthstone like that. She nodded to his snoring form. I can't be sure, but I think Pethro is his, what do you Christians call it? A Hail Mary pass. He was throwing that rune like you'd throw dice from a cup, turning our fate over to the gods. My palm was now bruised from clenching the stone. I still wasn't sure why Hearthstone had given it to me, but I felt a strong instinct to keep it from him. If only temporarily, no one should carry that kind of fate alone. I slipped the rune into my pocket. We trekked through the wilderness in silence for a while. At one point, Jack led us over the river on a fallen tree trunk. I couldn't help looking both ways for giant squirrels before crossing. In places, the snow was so deep we had to hop from boulder to boulder, while Otis the goat percolated about which one of us would slip, fall, and die first. I wish you'd be quiet, I muttered. I also wish we had snowshoes. You need Euler for that, said the goat. Who? The god of snowshoes, said Otis. He invented them, also archery, and I don't know other stuff. I never heard of a snowshoe god, but I would have paid real money if the god of snowmobiles had come roaring out of the woods right then to give us a lift. We kept trudging along. Yeah, we kept trudging along. Once we spotted a stone house on a summit of a hill. The gray light in it and the mountains played tricks with my perception. I couldn't tell if the house was small and nearby or massive and far away. I remembered what my friends had told me about giants, that they lived and breathed illusions. See that house? Jack said. Let's not go there. I didn't argue. Judging time was difficult, but by late afternoon, the river had turned into a raging current. Cliffs rose along the opposite bank in the distance. Through the trees, I heard the roar of a waterfall. Oh, that's right, said Otis. I remember now. You remember what? I asked. Why I left. I was supposed to get help for my master. Sam brushed a clump of snow off her shoulder. Why would Thor need help? The rapids, said Otis. I guess we'd better hurry. I was supposed to be quick, but I stood watching you guys for almost a day. I flinched. Wait, we were unconscious for a whole day? At least, said Otis. He's right, Jack said. According to my internal clock, it's Sunday the 19th. I warned you once. You took hold of me. Well, we fought those dwarves on Friday. You slept all the way through Saturday. Sam grimaced. We've lost valuable time. The Wolf's Island will appear in 3 more days, and we don't even know where Blitzen is. Probably my fault, Otis offered. I should have saved you earlier, but given a human mouth-to-mouth, I had to work up my nerve. My therapist gave me some breathing exercises. Guys, Jack, the sword interrupted. We're close now. For real this time. We're close now. For real this time. He hovered off through the woods. We followed the floating sword until the trees parted. In front of us stretched a beach of jagged black rocks and chunks of ice. On the opposite bank, sheer cliffs rose into the sky. The river had turned into full 1 Class 5 rapids, a combat zone of white water and half submerged boulders upstream. The river was compressed between two skyscraper-sized stone columns, man-made or natural. I couldn't tell. Couldn't tell. Their tops were lost in the clouds from the fissure between them. The river blasted out in a vertical sheet, less like a waterfall and more like a dam, splitting down the middle. Suddenly, Jotunheim did not seem like Vermont. It seemed more like the Himalayas, someplace not meant for mortals. It was hard to focus on anything except the raging falls, but eventually I noticed a small campsite on the beach, a tent, a fire pit, and a second goat with a dark fur pacing nervously on the shore. When the goat saw us, he came galloping over. Otis turned to us and shouted over the roar of the river, "This is Marvin. He's my brother. His proper name is Tangrisnir Snarler." But Otis, Marvin yelled, "Where have you been?" "I forgot what I was doing," said Otis. Marvin bleated in expiration. His lips were curled in a permanent snarl, which, I don't know, might have been how he got his name, Snarler. This is the help you found?" Marvin fixed his yellow eyes on me. "Two scrawny humans and a dead elf?" "He's not dead," I yelled. "Where is Thor?" "In the river," Marvin pointed with his horns. "The god of thunder is about to drown, and if you don't figure out a way to help him, I'll kill you. By the way, nice to meet you." "Well, there's your problem. You got a sword up your nose." 49. Uh, 49. Well, there's your problem. You got a sword up your nose. You there, John? You want to stop there or keep going?
No, we should keep going, man.
All right. Well, there's your problem. You've got a sword up your nose. I couldn't help it. When I heard the name Thor, I thought about it, the guy from the movies and comics, a big superhero from outer space with bright spandex tights, a red cape, Goldilocks hair, and maybe a helmet with fluffy little dove wings. In real life, Thor was scarier and redder and grungier. Also, he could cuss like a drunken, creative sailor, mother grubbing scum bucket. All right, John, you got to read. I'm getting hoarse.
It sounds like you are. You all right?
Yeah, I just getting hoarse. You know where we are?
How's everybody doing? You still with me?
Yep.
All right. Well, there's your problem. You got a sword up your nose. I couldn't help it. When I heard the name Thor, I thought about the guy from the movies and comics, a big superhero from outer space with bright spandex tights, a red cape, Goldilocks hair, and maybe a helmet with fluffy little dove wings. In real life, Thor was scarier and redder and grungier. Also, he could cuss like a drunken creative sailor. "Mother grubbing scum bucket," he yelled, or something along those lines. My brain may have filtered the actual language, as it would have made my ears bleed. "Where's my backup?" He stood chest deep in the flood near the opposite side, clinging to a scrubby brush that grew from the cliff. The rock was so smooth and slick, there were no other handholds. The bush looked like it was about to pull free of its roots any minute. Thor was going to get flushed downstream, where rows of jagged rocks shredded the current in a series of cataracts, perfect for making a Thor smoothie. Oh. From this distance, through the spray of water and mist, I couldn't see much of the god himself. Shoulder-length red hair, a curly red beard, and bodybuilder arms protruding from a sleeveless leather jerkin. He wore dark iron gauntlets that had reminded me of robot hands and a chainmail vest Blitzen would have found very trendy. Beard burning son of a mud lover, roared the god. Otis, is that you? Where's my artillery? My air support? Where the hellheim is my cavalry? I'm here, boss, Otis called. I brought 2 kids and a dead elf. He's not dead, I said again. A half-dead elf, Otis corrected. What good is that? Thor bellowed. I need that giantess killed, and I need her killed now. Giantess? I asked. Marvin headbutted me. That one, stupid. He nodded toward the waterfall. For a moment, the fog cleared from the tops of the cliffs, and I saw the problem. Next to me, Sam made a sound like she was being garroted. Holy Heimdall. Those skyscraper-sized pillars of rock, they were actually legs, immense legs, so gray and rough they blended in with the surrounding cliffs. The rest of the woman was so tall, she made Godzilla look like a toy poodle. She made the Sears Tower look like a traffic cone. Her thigh-length dress was stitched together from so many animal hides, it probably represented the extinction of several dozen species. Her face, somewhere up there in the stratosphere, was as stony and grim as the Mount Rushmore presidents, surrounded by a hurricane of long, dark hair. She gripped the cliff tops on either side of the river, as if straddling the torrent was hard even for her. She looked down, smiling cruelly at the little speck of thunder god caught in the current, then squeezed her legs closer together. The waterfall sprayed out between her shins in a highly pressurized curtain of liquid force. Thor tried to shout, but got a mouthful of river. His head went under. The bush he was clinging to bent sideways, its roots snapping one after the other. She's going to wash him into oblivion, Marvin said. Do something, humans. Like what? I thought. He's a god, I said. Can't he fly? Can't he zap her with lightning? Or what about his hammer? Doesn't he have a hammer? Marvin snarled. He was very good at snarling. Gee, why didn't we think of that? If Thor could do any of those things without losing his grip and getting instantly killed, don't you think he would have done it by now? I wanted to ask how a god could get killed since they were supposed to be immortal. And I thought about Mimir existing forever as a severed head and Balder getting cut down by a mistletoe dart and spending eternity down in Hell World. I looked at Sam. She shrugged helplessly. Against a giant that big, I have nothing. Hearthstone mumbled in his sleep. His eyelids were starting to flutter, but he wasn't going to be casting magic anytime soon. That left me only one friend to call on. Jack? The sword hovered next to me. Yeah? You see that massive giantess blocking the river? Technically speaking, Jack said, I can't see anything because I don't have eyes, but yes, I see the giant. You think you could fly up there and, I don't know, kill her? Jack hummed indignantly. You want me to kill a 2,000-foot tall giantess? Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You need to grab me and throw me like you've never thrown anything before. You need to really believe that killing this giantess is a worthy deed. And you need to be prepared for what will happen when you take hold of me again. How much energy would it take you personally to climb that 2,000-foot tall giant and kill her? The effort would probably destroy me, I thought, but I didn't see much choice. We needed information from Thor. Sam and Hearthstone and 2 antisocial talking goats were depending on me. Let's do it. I grabbed the sword. I tried to focus. I didn't care so much about saving Thor. I didn't even know the guy, nor did I particularly care why a half-mile tall giantess thought it was funny to stand in a river and spray a waterfall between her shins. But I did care about Sam, Blitzen, and Hearthstone. They'd risked their lives to get me this far. No matter what Loki promised, I had to find a way to stop Surt and keep Fenris Wolf chained. The wolf had caused my mother's death. Mimir had said that Fenris sent his 2 children. They were supposed to kill me. My mom had sacrificed her life to keep me alive. I had to make her sacrifice mean something. The huge gray giantess represented everything that was in my way, and she had to go. With every bit of my strength, I threw the sword. Jack sliced skyward like a rocket-powered boomerang. What happened next? Well, I wasn't sure I saw correctly. It was a long way up, but it looked like Jack flew into the giantess's left nostril. The giantess arched her back. She made a face like she was going to sneeze. Her hand slipped from the cliff tops. Jack flew out of her right nostril as the giantess's knees buckled, and she fell towards us. "Timber!" Jack yelled, spiraling back to me. "Run!" I screamed. Too late. The giantess's face planted in the river with a mighty floom. I have no memory of the wall of water that washed me into a tree, along with Sam, a half-asleep Hearthstone, and the 2 startled goats. Nevertheless, that's what must have happened. By sheer luck, none of us died. The giantess's body had completely changed the topography. Where there had been a river, there was now a wide, icy marsh, with water gurgling and spluttering around. Dead Lady Island as it tried to find new ways to get downstream. The beach was 6 inches underwater. Thor's campsite had vanished. The god himself was nowhere to be seen. "You killed Thor," Otis bleated. "You dropped a giantess on him." The giantess's right arm twitched. I almost fell out of the tree. I was afraid Jack had only stunned her, but then Thor wriggled his way out of the giantess's armpit with much cursing and grunting. Sam and I helped Hearthstone out of the tree as the god of thunder trudged across the giantess's back, jumped into the marsh, and waded toward us. His eyes were blue, rimmed with angry red. His expression was so fierce, it would have sent wild boars running for their mommies. Jack the sword appeared at my side, glistening with various types of goo, typically found in a giant's nostril. Ugh. "So, what do you think, senor?" His runes glowed. "You proud of me?" "I'll answer that if I survive the next 2 minutes." The angry god stopped in front of me. Water dripped from his red beard onto his extremely large chainmail-clad chest. His pot roast-sized fists were clenched in their iron gauntlets. "That," he cracked a grin, "was amazing." He clapped me on the shoulder so hard he dislocated several joints. "Join me for dinner. We can kill Otis and Marvin." I guess those goats are killed regularly. You guys want to keep going? I could do one more.
I'm down for as long as you can, Mr. Friendly, sir.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right. Be my pleasure. Chapter
All
fi-
right.
Chapter 50. No spoilers. Thor is way behind on his shows. Yep, we killed the goats. Thor promised they would be resurrected good as new the next morning, so long as we didn't break any bones. Otis assured me frequent deaths was good for his exposure therapy. Marvin growled at me to get on with it and not to be a weak-kneed wimp. It was a lot easier killing Marvin. Yeah, he sounds like kind of a jerk. After 2 years of homelessness, I thought I knew how tough it could be to keep myself fed, but let me tell you, killing and butchering an animal for my own supper was a new experience. You think it's gross to pull a half-eaten sandwich out of a trash bin? Try skinning a goat, cutting it into chunks, building a fire, then cooking the meat on a spit while attempting to ignore the goat head staring at you from the scrap pile. You might assume that kind of experience would turn me into a vegetarian, but nope. As soon as I smelled the cooking meat, my hunger took over. I forgot all about the horrors of goat slaughter. Those Otis kebabs were the best thing I ever tasted. Oh my God. As we ate, Thor chatted about giants, Jotunheim, and his opinions of Midgard television shows, which, for some reason, he followed religiously. Can I say God did something religiously? "Giants," he shook his head in disgust. "After all these centuries, you'd think they would learn to stop invading Midgard, but no. They're like the, what is it? The League of Assassins in Arrow. They just keep coming back, as if I would let anything happen to humans. You guys are my favorite species." He patted my cheek. Fortunately, he had taken off his iron gloves, or he would have broken my jaw. Unfortunately, he hadn't washed his hands after gutting the goats. Hearthstone sat at the fire, nibbling on a piece of Marvin haunch. He was getting some of his strength back, though every time I looked at him, I had to force myself not to sob. I wanted to hug the poor guy, bake him a batch of cookies, and tell him how sorry I was about his crappy childhood, but I knew he wouldn't want pity. He wouldn't want me to start treating him differently. Still, the empty cup runestone weighed heavily in my coat pocket. Sam stayed at the edges of the fire as far from Thor as she could get. She said as little as possible and made no sudden movements, which meant that most of Thor's attention was on me. Everything the Thunder God did, he did with gusto. He loved cooking his goats. He loved eating and drinking mead. He loved telling stories, and he loved farting. Boy, did he love farting. When he got excited, sparks of electricity flew from his hands, his ears, and, well, I'll leave the rest to your imagination. Unlike his movie version, there was nothing polished about Thor. His face was handsome in a beat-up way, like he'd spent years in the boxing ring. His chainmail was filthy. His leather jerkin and trousers had worn to the color of dirty snow. Tattoos covered his muscular arms. On his left biceps, Sif was inscribed inside a heart. Around his right forearm coiled a stylized world serpent. Across his knuckles on either hand in block letters were the names Magni, M-A-G-N-I, and Modi, M-O-D-I. At first, I was nervous about the name Magni because it was so close to Magnus. The last thing I wanted was my name printed across the Thunder God's fist. But Sam assured me, quietly, that it was a totally different name. Thor regaled me with his theories about a hypothetical death match between Daryl from The Walking Dead and Mike from Breaking Bad. Back when I was hanging out on the sidewalks of Boston, I would have been happy to talk TV for hours just to pass the time. But now I had a quest looming. We'd lost a whole day to unconsciousness. Speculating on the new fall lineup wasn't going to mean much if the world was consumed in flames 3 days from now. Still, Thor was having so much fun, it was hard to change the subject. So what do you think? He asked. Best villain in an ongoing series. Wow, tough one. I pointed at his knuckles. So who are Magni and Modi? My sons, Thor beamed. With the goat grease in his beard and the random electrical sparks flying from his fingers, I was worried he might set himself on fire. I've got a lot of sons, of course, but they're my favorites. Yeah, I asked. How old are they? He frowned. This is embarrassing, but I'm not sure. They might not even be born yet. Wait, how? Magnus, Sam interrupted. Lord Thor's two sons, Magni and Modi, are fated to survive Ragnarok. Their names are spoken in the prophecies of the Norms. That's right. Thor leaned towards Sam. What were you again? Sam, my lord. You have a familiar aura, girl. The god furrowed his red eyebrows. Why is that? I was Valkyrie. Sam inched backward. Oh, maybe that's it. Thor shrugged. You'll have to excuse me. I've been on 3,506 consecutive deployments to the Eastern Front, keeping the giants at bay. Get a little jumpy sometimes. Hearthstone signed and gassy. Thor belched. What do the elves say? I do not speak gesticulation. He was wondering how you keep current on television, I said, seeing as you're out in the field so much. Thor laughed. I have to do something to keep myself sane. Hearthstone signed. How's that working out for you? The elf agrees, Thor guessed. I can watch my shows anywhere, or at least I could. Among its many other powers, my hammer Mjolnir got full bars of service and HD resolution in any of the 9 worlds. Got? Past tense? Sam asked. Thor cleared his throat loudly. But enough about television. How's that goat meat? You didn't break any bones, did you? Sam and I exchanged looks. When we'd first introduced ourselves to the god, I'd found it strange that Thor didn't have his hammer. It was sort of his signature weapon. I'd figured maybe it was just in disguise, like my sword. Now I was starting to wonder. His piercing, bloodshot gaze made me think it might be dangerous to ask, though. No, sir, I said. We didn't break any bones. Just theoretically, what would happen if we did? Oh, well, the goats would be resurrected with that damage, he said, which would take a long time to heal and be very annoying. Then I'd either have to kill you or make you my slave forever. Hearthstone sighed. This god is a freak. You're right, Mr. Elf, Thor said. This is a fair and just punishment. That's how I got my regular manservant, Thjalfi. Thor shook his head. Poor kid. These deployments were starting to get to him. I had to grant him a furlough. I really could use another slave. He studied me appraisingly. So I set aside my goat meat. How did you end up in the river, and why was that giantess trying to drown you? Oh, her? Thor glowered at the neighborhood-sized corpse in the middle of the icy swamp. She's a daughter of Geirrod, one of my old enemies. I hate that guy. He's always sending his daughters to kill me. He gestured toward the cliffs. I was heading to his fortress to see if, well, no matter. Thank you for the assist. That was Frey's sword, wasn't it? Yes, Jack's around here somewhere. I whistled and Jack came hovering over. Hello, Thor, said the sword. Long time no see. Ah! The god clapped his hands in delight. I thought I recognized you. What isn't your name, Sumerbrander? Why did the human call you Jorvik? Jack, the sword corrected. Yak? No, the sword said patiently. Jack, with the English J sound. Oh, okay, fine. Well, nice job with the giantess. You know what they say, Jack sounded smug. The bigger they are, the easier it is to fly up their nasal cavity. True, Thor said. But I thought you were lost. How did you come to be with these strange folk? He calls us strange, Hearthstone signed. Lord Thor, Sam said, we actually came here looking for you. We need your help, as Magnus will now explain. She stared at me like, if he knows what's good for him. I told Thor about the Norn's prophecy. 9 days hence, sun going east. Surt explodes everything. Fenris wolf, nasty teeth, eats world, etc. Thor became agitated. Sparks flew from his elbows. He rose and paced around the fire, occasionally punching nearby trees. You want me to tell you where the island is? He deduced. That would be great, I said. But I can't, Thor muttered to himself. I can't be sending random mortals on a wolf-watching tour. Too dangerous. But Ragnarok, not ready. No, not unless... He froze, then turned toward us with an eager gleam in his eyes. Perhaps that's why you're here. I do not like this, Hearthstone signed. Thor nodded. The elf agrees. You have come to assist me. Exactly, said Jack, humming with excitement. Let's do it, whatever it is. I had a sudden desire to hide behind the goat carcasses. Anything the god of thunder and the sword of summer agreed on, I didn't want to be a part of. Sam placed her axe at her side as if she anticipated needing it soon. Let me guess, Lord Thor, you've lost your hammer again. Now, I did not say that. Thor wagged a finger at her. You did not hear that from me. Because if that were true, hypothetically speaking, and if word got out, the giants would invade Midgard immediately. You mortals don't realize how often I keep you safe. My reputation alone makes most giants too afraid to attack your world. Back up, I said. What did Sam mean by again? You've lost your hammer before? Once, Thor said. Oh, okay, twice. Well, 3 times if you count this time. Which you shouldn't, because I'm not admitting that the hammer is missing. Right, I said. So, how did you lose it? I don't know. Thor started to pace again, his long red hair sparking and popping. It was just like, poof. I tried retracing my steps. I tried the Find My Hammer app, but it doesn't work. Isn't your hammer the most powerful weapon in the universe? I asked. Yes. And I thought it was so heavy, nobody except you could pick it up. True. Even I need my iron gloves of strength to lift it. But giants are tricky. They're big and strong, and they have magic. With them, many impossible things are possible. I thought about the eagle big boy and how easily he'd suckered me. Yeah, I get it. Is that why you were going to A-Rod's? Geirrod's, Thor corrected. And yes, he's a likely suspect. Even if he doesn't have it, he might know who does. Besides, without my hammer, I can't watch my shows. I'm a season behind on Sherlock, and it's killing me. I was ready to go to Gayrod's fortress myself, but I'm very glad you volunteered to go for me. We did? Hearthstone asked. That's the spirit, Mr. Elf. I'm glad you're ready to die for my cause. Really not, Hearth signed. Just go to Gayrod's fortress and check for my hammer. Of course, it's important you don't let on that it is missing. If Gayrod doesn't have it, we don't want him to know that I don't have it. But, if he doesn't have it, obviously ask him if he knows who does without actually admitting that it's missing. Samira pressed her fingers to her temples. I'm getting a headache. Lord Thor, how are we supposed to find your hammer if we can't mention? You'll figure it out, he said. You humans are a clever bunch. Then once you've determined the truth, I'll know you are worthy of facing Fenris Wolf. I'll give you the location of his island and you can stop Ragnarok. You help me, I help you. It sounded more like you help me, then you help me some more. But I doubted there was a polite way to decline without getting an iron gauntlet in my teeth. Sam must have been thinking the same thing. Her face turned roughly the same shade of green as her hijab. Lord Thor, she said, invading a giant's fortress with only 3 people would be suicidal, Hearthstone suggested. Stupid. Difficult, Sam said. Just then a nearby pine tree shuddered. Blitzen dropped from the branches and landed waist deep in a pile of slush. Hearthstone scrambled over and helped him to his feet. Oh, thanks, buddy, Blitz said. Stupid tree travel. What? Is this a friend of yours? Thor raised one ironclad fist. Or should I? No, I mean, yes, he's a friend. Blitzen. Thor, Blitzen. The Thor. Blitzen bowed so low it looked like he was trying to avoid an airstrike. Honored. Seriously. Hi, wow. Well then, the Thunder God grinned. You have 4 people to storm the giant citadel. Friend dwarf, help yourself to my goat meat and my fire. As for me, after being stuck in that river so long, I'm going to turn in early. In the morning, you all can set off to find my hammer, which of course is not officially missing. Thor tromped over to his bed of furs, threw himself down and began snoring. With as much gusto as he'd been farting. Blitzen frowned at me. What have you gotten us into? Long story, I said. Here, have some Marvin. End of chapter.